Hey, movie fans, the first thing I want to talk about today is I saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in theaters. I thought this movie was fantastic. The only negative I have with this movie is that it was at times at the beginning a little hard to hear the characters' dialogue at times. But I also I know Phil Lowe commented on this, but do so the movie said it was like talking about how the theaters need to turn up the volume for the characters' dialogue to hear them. And it sounds like it's more of a basically a theater worldwide issue thing. With I know like I've heard some people who say they've had issues in seeing this in theaters where they couldn't completely hear the dialogue at times. It didn't really bother me. Like I felt like I was able to like get the characters, get the story and the characters. So and that's like a minor issue for me personally. It's like a nitpick. But everything else was fantastic. Great story. I love the way he took the Miles character, and this movie does feel more mature and darker than the first movie. It still has some comedy in there though, because I thought when the comedy hits, it's funny. It doesn't feel like it overdoes it with the comedy. Like it felt like it has that great balance like the first movie, but this is a little bit more dark and mature. I love how they go just more deeper with the characters, and all the voice cast is great. Haley Sci-Fi, Spider Gwen, fantastic. The guy who voices Miles, he's great as Spider Man. The Isaac who voices Spider Man 2099, he's great, and all the returning cast members from the first movie with the actor who played Peter Parker that was kind of like gave up on himself in the first movie and mentored Miles. The actor did a great job. Just the whole voice cast did great when it comes even to new characters. The indie Spider Man, Spider Punk. Yeah, I thought it was cool to see Ben Wiley in this Spider Man clone. I remember he appeared in like the '90s Spider Man animated series when they did a whole like crossover at the end where you had different Spider Man from different dimensions. And I always loved the Scarlet Spider costume. And the animation style looks fantastic in this. Like, I love how when you go to all these different Spider Man, they show the worlds and you see how some of the worlds look and how like these kind of have the unique animation style to it, which I thought was cool. And I loved all the Easter eggs and cameos. You get one from Danny Glover who played Miles' uncle in Spider-Man: Homecoming. He appears in this, and this will be a spoiler review. So just yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, just don't watch this. But I love that you get a little Easter egg with Andrew Garfield and Tony McGuire with like a clip from both of one of the clip of like Tobey Maguire seeing Uncle Ben die, and there's a Wisdom of Spider-Man movie, and then Andrew Garfield clip in this movie too, which was great just to see little Easter eggs like that. And this does a great job with the whole multiverse concept, where it's like talking about like Easton is a canon point and timeline, and I love that. And you have this whole like Society of Spider-Man, and Isaac does a great job of Spider-Man 2099. Like I said, I love his character. Like I just love how he's a bit more ferocious and he's kind of like a vampire version of Spider-Man, which I thought was just really cool. And his backstory just is a great. It's just is a great story. It was tragic, and you understand like he's basically the antagonist of the movie, the one trying to stop Miles. But you understand his point of view. And I always say like great villains to me are ones that you like. You're like, oh yeah, they're bad, but you get the point of view. You definitely understand his point of view in this movie, which I loved. And I love the Miles story in this, where Spider-Man 99 is talking about, oh, you weren't meant to be bit by a spider, because that spider was from another dimension. So Peter was supposed to survive. He was supposed to go on. Or was supposed to, is supposed to go on. He wasn't meant to be Spider-Man Miles. And I love this idea of just him, like, like everybody's telling him what to do, what his story is. And I love this stuff with his parents. There's some great emotional moments with his mom. Whereas the first movie I would say is more about him and his dad. I would say this movie is more about him and his mom. His dad gets some great moments in this movie too, but it's really like more about him and his mom. And I love the stuff she was like saying to him, how like she's afraid for him to grow up and go out in the big world. How he wants to do more. How he wants to do more. Do important things. And I just love the whole scene. Like you really feel like they're a family. These characters, just great moments with the family. I thought the villain was great. Spot. I remember he appeared in the '90s Spider-Man animated series, and I always thought his abilities were kind of cool. But I love this whole backstory in this way. It connects back to the first Spider-Man movie, and the fact that he was just funny to me too. Like I like how he's kind of like he has this cool pal, but he's kind of like a more like goofy side villain. and he's not really a well-known villain. So it was just cool to see him like in animation and see his powers used. And I don't know, I felt sympathy towards the villain in this too. I was like, I get why he's the bad, why he's a bad guy. I like the fact he's kind of like always trying to like like tell Miles, I'm your, I'm not enemy of the weak, which I thought was funny. So I think it was just a funny, fun villain in this movie. And despite, I love what they did with Spider-Man too, of his whole story arc where she gets, she gets more to do in this movie. I loved her in the first movie, and they really give a great continuation of a story in this movie. When you find out what happened to her best friend Peter, how he becomes the lizard of that alternate universe because he wanted to be special, and that's one of the things I loved is that to me in every version of Peter, in every version of Spider-Man, Peter's like a nerdy, awkward guy. He's not, and it makes sense he would if there's an alternate universe where he doesn't become Spider-Man. It makes sense he would do that to like get to want to have powers to feel special. So I love that. I love the fact Granny references the fact that because I was thinking to maybe there was she did really care for Peter more than as a friend probably. She hints that in every universe Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker don't work out. So I thought that was a nice little nod to the fact that's like another thing that's kind of canon in every universe. They hint in this movie that yeah, Peter and Gwen don't usually end up working out. They always, the story ends kind of tragically all the time. And I love the stuff of Fada about him like finding out who she is and how she, he's chasing her down because he's thinking Spider Gwen like killed Peter, and it was by accident she killed Peter. She didn't know that was Peter, and it was. So I thought that was a really cool storyline in this movie. Felt like I really felt invested and cared like I did in the first movie, and it felt like I really loved the Fada and like stuff with Gwen too. So this movie just has like a great emotional moments in it. It has a great accent. You care for all the characters. It's a movie that I will want to see again in theaters a second time. Like it's like Guardians 3 where it stuck with me afterwards when it comes to story and characters. And the way it ends to me, I love the cliffhanger about seeing the version of Miles when he becomes a power. Is the villain his uncle is in his universe. Like he becomes the Apollo in the first movie, but he dies. But I love how in this version, Miles becomes a villain in this universe. So it was cool to end with a way where he meets like an evil version of himself. I can see the ending being a problem for some people. I know some people might feel like since it was ending a cliffhanger, they may feel annoyed because it's not like Infinity War where it tells a complete story and you feel like by the end of it, you're like, okay, you told a complete story, but there's obviously still some stuff left. With this movie, it really leaves on a cliffhanger. So I can definitely see that people being annoyed by that. I wasn't because I remember them like saying it originally these two movies when we called part one, part two, and I think part two is like they changed the titles of part one, part two, and then the third movie. I know the third movie is coming out next year, so I can see people being a little annoyed by the cliffhanger if they didn't know that. But I thought it left on a great way to end it on, where it was like, oh man, I can't wait to see the next one. I want to see how the story ends. So great movie. I recommend see this in theaters. This is like one of those movies to me. You gotta go out and see in the theaters, not watch at home for the first time. The next thing I want to talk about is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse making 120. I love hearing this. The first one made 35 when it came out, and it made like worldwide like 380, 90 area, where it had like a 90 budget or something like that. And I love the fact this movie made way more than the first movie because obviously at the time Miles was, he wasn't like a well-known kid. Like he was a well-known character, but he wasn't as popular as Peter. But I loved that this movie made more than the first one, and that it's getting great reviews that people. Because this is the movie to me, I feel like it's going to be like Guardians 3. It's going to have good legs. I feel like this is the type of movie that people are going to go back and see again and again. And again, this shows why. I keep saying this. What I said about Guardians 3 is that it's not about people getting tired of comic movies. They just want people just want great movies, and it's like anything, I want great movies like Guardians 3 and this that really shows that comic movies are still alive. You just got to make a great movie. But yeah, I'm happy to hear this news with the box office. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention in my review for Spider Verse is that they do a great job of still making Miles feel like it's his story. It comes to balancing out all the characters. So yeah, I've got to bring up in my review, but I'm definitely happy for the box office for this movie. The next thing I want to talk about is Keith David, who played the character in the Russell Coke's The Thing movie, John Carpenter's Thing movie, where he was the one that survived the end with Russell Coke's character. Apparently, he did an interview where he said he can't talk about possibly being a sequel to the Thing. I would love to see this. I know they did a comic book that was a sequel where they showed like him and Kurt Russell went to they got saved and they went to the city, so it got loose in the city because it was revealed that Kurt Russell's friend was the affected one. I would love to see a story and to see this because I love that movie and I think it would be cool since they did do a comic book continuation and maybe to take some stuff from there to do a sequel. But I would love to see that. I know the prequel. I mean, the Thing prequel wasn't all that good, but I would be up for seeing a Thing sequel with those two characters. And the next thing I want to talk about is Tim Story, the director of the Fantastic Four movie, saying how much it was, he wasn't a fan of the fact that he made Galactus into a cloud because it was a whole controversial thing. I love hearing that because even though I don't like his Fantastic Four movies, I thought they were too goofy. A lot of the casting didn't really land for me outside of Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis. And one of the things I did hate about his movies, besides a bunch of problems that just didn't work for me about those two movies, is how they treated Galactus in that movie. He looked like a giant cloud. I thought that was so stupid. They talk about how it was like, early time, studios maybe afraid to go to take Galactus where he looks like in the comics and adapt that. And I can understand it might look goofy on screen if you tried to, but it's just the whole cloud thing was just retarded to me. And I'm just not a fan of those two movies personally. But it was nice to hear that the director, wasn't didn't really like the way Galactus turned out in that movie. So that's all the movie news. Until next time, movie fans.